go another day. Got work to do, ends to make, but I'm just thankful for what I've got. I've been down to dollar one, but I know where my help comes from. Right on time, ain't that just like God? I see blessings falling out of nowhere, and I'm thinking, ain't that just like God? Ain't that just like God? The world is changing, but your love holds me steady, and I'm thinking, ain't that just like God? Oh, ain't that just like God? I've had sunny days when people try throwing shade, and I've had to hide the tears I cried. They say sticks and stones may break your bones, and words don't hurt your soul. And even though the scars are deep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Blessings falling out of nowhere, and I'm thinking, ain't that just like God? Ain't that just like God? The world is changing, but your love holds me steady, and I'm thinking, ain't that just like God? Oh, ain't that just like God?
Anymore. So we were really glad to get to do this. So for those of you who are brand new, I'm just going to give a real quick recap. What is a story night? It started in Santa Barbara, and I got to bring it with me up here, which was really fun. And the point is, it's real women, real stories, real hope. So these are not paid professional public speakers that you would recognize names. These are the women that are your next door neighbors, close friends, just the ladies that you see on a day-to-day life who are being very brave to come up and share their stories for these events. And I think God's really intentional on who speaks at each event. There's always a reason, and I trust him on that. These are real stories. Some of them are very heavy. Some of you have been to the very, very heavy ones. Some of them are more lighthearted. Some come with trigger warnings, some don't. Some ladies who share their stories are in their 20s, some are in their 90s. We have everybody in between, and it's just really wonderful. A range of topics. We've had marriage and motherhood and cancer and abuse and divorce and mental health and mission work and so much more that I couldn't list. Now, there's one more part: real women, real stories, real hope. So the idea is that you leave tonight with some hope. So even if we go through a hard part of a story, this is almost like watching a Disney movie or a Hallmark movie where you know there's going to be a happy, hopeful ending. So if we get through a rough patch, just hang tight. We'll get to the hope and the happiness at the end. So hopefully tonight you'll leave encouraged, you'll leave feeling blessed, and maybe even leave with a new friend. This is actually our 16th story night here at Calvary Mac. And then there are some little cards on your desks about the podcast. Many of you know about that. Many of you have told your story on a podcast, and I'm going to kind of call you out. Raise your hand if your story's on the podcast. You might have somebody at your table who has a story. We have 115 stories on there so far, which is really fun. So you can go driving or work out and listen to a whole bunch more of these. So now, the hope is that you do go home with a new friend tonight. So I want to do some quick table talk. And usually these conversations have something to do with the stories that you're going to hear tonight. So let's take a look. I have a couple of questions for you, for the ladies around your table. Have you ever tried saying no to something and then been very grateful that you actually said yes? And then have you ever found yourself saying, how did I get here? So these ones are a little bit more, you have to think about these. These are not just like, where were you born and how far did you travel to get here? So I'm going to let everyone kind of talk about these for a few minutes, and then I'll gather us back and maybe we'll have some prizes.
Shove, yeah. That, and finding that you do have those gifts. He always gives you those gifts. So I feel like for me, that's. Did I get here? Oh God, what do you want? That's a simple answer, but. Oh man, gee, what the thing.
right, I'm going to wrap everybody up here. I know those were I probably should have, given you those questions in an email so you could have thought about them before you arrived tonight. I'll do that next time. But for those of you who were able to kind of, sort of think on your feet, were any amazing stories? Did any amazing stories come out in the tables? You want to nominate somebody to share? Yes, ma'am. Okay. I want to hear it. I'm coming to you. You might get a prize.
Okay. So I about opportunity to choose to work in McMinnville or out in Sheridan, and I saw McMinnville, and I was like, oh, that's a place that looks like modern. There's a lot more people. And then I drove to Sheridan, and I was like, oh man, I don't think this is where I'm supposed to be. It's just a lot smaller. The population is just not very much, and it's just kind of a slower pace. And probably for the first 3 to 6 months, I was asking myself, how did you get here? Why are you here? Why did God want me to go to this little town? But I have found that the people out there are some of the most down-to-earth people I've ever met. They're real, super friendly. They don't have these facades they try to carry, anything like that. And there's so many people that need to feel connected and to have someone believe in them and to give them hope. I work in social services, and so that's kind of what my role is. And I had no idea it was going to be such a fulfilling role. I may not be able to fix their situation, but in a lot of circumstances, they just need someone to believe in them and to encourage them to keep reaching for goals and things they want to accomplish. So I think it's pretty cool.
I love that. You want to go pick one of the 4 prizes? You have 4 choices up there. Nope, I tricked you. You got the microphone. Are there any other stories that should be shared with everybody? You don't have to nominate yourself. You can nominate somebody else and really make them love you. Oh, look, Margie's nominating. Yay, of course, Kit. Hi.
I don't think I should be sharing this.
Oh, of course you should. You know what, ladies? I have been able to record a little bit of Kit's life story with her over the past, it's been over the past year, so it's really special. What, was there a specific one, Margie, that she should share?
How she moved here.
How you moved here? How did you get here?
Yeah, well, I just came up in a car. It was kind of a surprise to us to come up. We came from California. We were living in Ukiah, California. My husband had a very serious operation where the doctors had given him only 1 hour to live twice, and he pulled through, and he finally was able to be well enough to keep going. And I said, well, I think we should come up here to see the rest of your family before anything more happens. So we came right here to McMinnville, where a few members of his family were, and had a little reunion. And we're on our way to Canada when I forget our passport. So we turned around and we called back to Hillside to see if they had any room there to take care of us for 5 days. That time, that was the marketing plan. You can go in, stay for 5 days and eat and have the talk and go around and visit. So the second day we're there, my husband says, I think we belong here. I was just so shocked because he was the one who said, we're never going to move. We're always going to stay in California. So anyway, that was the beginning of our life right here in McMinnville, and I'm so glad that we're here.
We're so glad you're here, Kit. You can go pick there's 3 prizes you can choose up there. All right, well, we have 2 more prizes. One of them I'm going to wait until the end of the event. And for this other one, I did mention this in an email, so I want to stay true to my word. I am curious who brought the most first-timers to Story Night. So let's start with, if you brought 1 first-timer to Story Night, raise your hand. Okay, keep your hand up if you brought 2 first-timers to Story Night. I've lost hands. Some of you don't want to raise your hand, but I know it. How many did you bring? Alyssa, how many did you bring that are first time? Yeah. Just one? One? Did you bring two? One? We have a three-way tie? That doesn't work. There we go. You can't have your own prize, though. Well, we're going to give you some flowers because you're sharing your story. Thank you for bringing so many first-timers, Joan. I love that. All right. You brought 4. Good job. Good speaker job. All right. Well, I'm going to invite Abby on stage to open us with a song. And while she's walking up here, I just want to encourage all of you to really listen to these lyrics. If you've been here before, you know we try and pick songs that have some kind of connection to our speaker's story. And we want you to, feel encouraged by them as well. So this song is called Oceans. And the lyrics might give you a little glimpse into what you might hear about when Joan comes up and shares. Thank you, Abby. you so much, Abby. We love hearing your voice, and you always bless us with your music, so I appreciate that. And hopefully, if you haven't heard that song before, that really just touched you. It's a beautiful song. And before we invite Joan up to tell her story, though, we always have a lady introduce our speaker. And so I'd like to have Brenda come up. She's going to tell us a little bit about Joan. She's got a poem to share. Maybe there's a little story about Joan we're going to hear. We're going to hear the things about Joan that Joan will not say about herself.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies, for joining us this evening. I'm privileged to be able to introduce her, even though you've heard her name a bunch of times. But before I do that, she did ask me to read a poem that really moved her. And before I read this poem, just to kind of set the background for the author, Mary Yoder, who wrote this poem, was a former Amish woman who found her true identity after learning who Jesus really was as her Savior. Many people don't realize that a lot of the Amish sects are, they live in bondage, abuse, and legalism, and not realizing that salvation is not bought through works of the flesh, but is a free gift of God through belief in His Son, Jesus Christ. And there is a whole group that goes out on mission to help people who want to leave the Amish community and kind of help integrate them into society as well as bring them to know the Lord Jesus. So Mary Yoder wrote this poem called "In This Journey Called Life." In this journey called life, my head is bent low because of the pain, and yet I must go. God bade me move forward, forsake all that you know. So I pick up my head, view the bright golden gates, onward, yes, forward, my eyes on the goal. The bright golden gates where we'll enter one day, where our tears will be wiped by His dear, gentle hand. Our pain all forgotten, in His presence we stand, healed. Our family's rejection, we don't understand how love is so conditional. Its very presence is banned. Sisters and brothers, parents and friend, dear sweet nieces and nephews as well. Relationships crushed, and yet we move. Onward, yes, forward, our eyes on the goal, the bright golden gates where we'll enter one day, where our tears will be wiped by His dear, gentle hand, our pain all forgotten. In His presence we stand, healed. All that was near to us, friends so kind, facing a future so new and untried, only relying on Jesus to guide. His comfort and strength He's never denied as onward we go. Now we have a family, blood family at that, connected through Christ and the blood that He shed. They stand with us ever in prayer and in faith, stronger and dearer than anything we've left. Pushed to beyond our own human strength, in faith we move forward, onward and upward, pressing in closer to our Father God. Blessed by the Father, yes, blessed beyond measure. So with faith and with pleasure we move onward, yes, forward, our eyes on the goal. So, moving poem, and your speaker this evening has had a profound impact on my life. I owe my faith, love, and knowledge of Jesus Christ as my Redeemer to her and her example in my life. She's been with me and there for me through incredibly difficult times over the years, and continues to be a godly mentor and prayer warrior for me. Her name is Joan, and she's not only my best friend, but also the one I call Mom. Give her a hand as she comes up here to join me. I forgot I was supposed to share a couple funny stories. So You're going to get to stand with me while I share a couple funny stories. So, some things that she might not tell you about herself. So, she was such a wonderful mom, so involved in all of my activities as a child. And one of the things that really stood out to me was how much my friends enjoyed coming to our house. They would call my mom, Mom, and she always made everyone feel welcome. And so my friends in high school loved to come to my home. And then in college, she saved my life and came to rescue me from an abusive relationship. I couldn't have done it without her. And then when my late husband died 20 years ago in a car accident, she was there for me and my kids. I couldn't have done that without her. She and my dad picked up and moved to McMinnville to be close to me and my kids to help me raise them. She's such an example, such a rock, and I couldn't ask for a better mother. And she makes the best pies you will ever eat. You got to ask her to make one of your pies. I love you.
Wow. Whoa. I don't think I can top that. All right, let me get a... Well, can't get out of this now, can I? Well, ladies, you know my name is Joan, and I've been attending Calvary for about 3.5 years now. I'm 78 years old and have a lot of stories to share. So how do I fit all these decades into about 40 minutes? When writing down a timeline and praying, I felt God leading me to focus on this one story, which began when I was almost 70. I was in New York waiting to board a plane for India. I was all packed, prepared, and did all that was required to go. But I had said no. How did I end up here? And will I really put trust in the one who called me to go? Before we get started, I want to thank all the ladies who made this night possible. Jessica, who asked me a year ago and said, take your time. My family, the setup team, technical, all who helped with food, brought gift bags, especially you prayer warriors out there, and each lady who came tonight. I really appreciate it. I have 3 children, 7 grandkids, and 2 great-grands. I pray that this story will be profitable for you to see how God can use you if you are willing.
Okay, we have a surprise. So, those of you who saw my email, I said we're going to do something a little different tonight. Bear with me. Joan agreed to be a guinea pig. We're going to do something a little different. We hope it's fun. Hang tight. All right, ladies. Now, I mentioned to many of you, and many of you have followed along, that we have a podcast version of this. And in the podcast version of Story Night, I get to sit down either on Zoom or in the same room with different speakers. And we get to have more of just a conversation. And I record it, and we talk, and I interrupt them sometime to ask a follow-up question or to touch on an important topic. And I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, one of my wonderful Story Night team members said, have you ever thought about doing that format live, where it's like a conversation, like you're doing a podcast, but in front of everybody? So bear with us. Here we go. We haven't done this before. This is not scripted. This is not rehearsed. Are you all ready? Okay, so we're going to pretend like we are doing the podcast recording, and I get to kind of talk to Joan about her life and let her just share, and you all get to be the audience for this very fun, unusual night. And if this is your first time, this is not normally what we do. So here we go. Let's get... I know you should have seen the look on her face when I was like, do you want to try something different? She said yes. She probably wanted to say no, but she said yes. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, actually, is I am going to show all of those wonderful grandkids and great-grandkids. Aren't they fun? She said she had a lot. All right, well, Joan, thank you so much for being willing to do this. Welcome to Story Night. And before, you left us off at sort of this cliffhanger where you're, almost 70 and you're about to go to India, and we don't really know why or any of that yet. But I always like speakers to sort of rewind the tape and start a little bit with the beginning, because normally there's a part of your story that led you to that moment where you're sitting there going, how did I get here, and can I get out of this? And I was going to say no, but I actually said yes. So let's kind of go all the way back to the beginning, and will you tell us where you were born and a little bit about your childhood?
Sure. Like I said earlier, trying to break down almost 80 years. So I just kind of did it in like the first part's birth to 18, and then broke it down as we go along. I was born in 1946 in Stratford, Ontario, Canada. And young girls, that's the only thing Justin Bieber and I have in common. Born in the same town. I'm the oldest of 6 girls. There is still drama. And I found out last month that Charity is the youngest of 6 girls. So I guess if... it's still drama.
Never ends.
So I think the good Lord, if you don't get a boy, he throws in a couple of extra girls. That must be what happened. Anyway. The first 2 of us were born 1 year apart on the same day. I don't know how my mom managed that one. There were 4 of us born in 3.5 years. The 5th came 5 years later, and the last 4 years later when my mom was 41. The 4 of us, close in age, did everything together. Shared toys, clothes, playtime, friends, baths, homework, etc. We moved 21 times. So many towns between LA and San Diego. Several places near Las Vegas, Nevada, Florida, where my last sister was born. Also Ontario, New Brunswick, and British Columbia. I was in 15 different schools. One was a 2-room schoolhouse back in New Brunswick. Oh, that's a story in itself.
Wait. There's a story, right? Because you can't move 21 times and go to 15 schools without a whole bunch of different stories, and just sort of what that was like to go from school to school.
Well, it was way out in the country, dirt road to get out there, and there was 2 rooms. One was, they don't have kindergarten in Canada. So 1st to 6th grade, and then my side was 7th to 12th grade. And the teacher just handed me a bunch of books and says, well, here you go. Have any questions, come up and ask me. Turn them in at the end of the year. It was unique.
So for everyone complaining about homework in today's world, they can
Yeah.
take a
And it
lesson
was,
from that.
We were required to have French, too. You have to have that in Canada.
Can you still speak French?
No.
Okay. That was going to be fun.
Parlez-vous français? And then we moved to the segregated South, which was separate water fountains, segregation everywhere. It was so sad to live and actually see that. I know a lot of people have read it in books, but to live amongst it. My dad says, well, we didn't understand. Well, why can't we talk to black people? And he said, they're fine, and you could, but the white kids will beat you up. So you can't do that. When you're always the new kid, you get picked on a lot, even by teachers. They don't want to bother with a new kid, and they got away with a lot of stuff then that they can't do today. 3 of us girls graduated high school, and 3 did not. We did have very nice parents, but really worshiped our dad. He was the highlight of the day, and we could not wait till he came home from work. My parents believed in God, but did not at church except 1 year in 1953 to 54. We went every week. I was about 8. In 1958, we went. They sent us to Vacation Bible School. I had just turned 12. I won a white New Testament for bringing the most kids, 11. I still have that little white testament.
And you got a prize for bringing people again tonight. Yes. This is a theme.
We just finished up with the Vacation Bible School.
The hallway is still all decorated. People keep coming in like,
Right.
is this usually like this? Yeah.
It's very important. You never know where it will lead a child. When I was 13, we moved to New Brunswick, where my father was from. They had us attend Sunday school, but the adults didn't go. This is where I learned all the books of the Bible. I did not attend church again until 1963.
So I have a question for you here as you're
Okay.
kind of, you've started a little bit of sort of your spiritual story, but in all of the moves and all of the different things you saw, especially, just every different type of schooling and probably every different type of community and all these different kids, and especially talking about living in the segregated South, was that hard to reconcile, like as a kid, as you're sort of getting bits and pieces of your faith, but watching a lot of real life ugliness?
I don't think in my case, I'm kind of an optimist. And when you're a child, you don't really dwell. The moving in itself is so big that as long as you have your parents there, that's all you really care about. Yeah. And what I did learn, I didn't really understand. That doesn't mean it isn't working. It's just I didn't understand.
Well, and that's, I think, an encouragement to everybody listening that, even planting those seeds, even if young kids don't seem to really get it, those seeds are still planted. And somewhere down the line, those seeds might get watered.
Right.
And we're going to follow your story. We've still got all kinds of fun things to do. We're gonna kind of jump now to Southern California.
Yep.
Am I correct? Okay,
Yes.
now we're getting into your senior year of high school.
Yes.
This is going to be a big turning point. Hold
Yes.
on. We're going to buckle up. We're going to do a lot in this year. Here we go.
This part. Yeah, we returned in my senior year, and this move really upset me, and I cried for 3 weeks. But there's nothing I could do, so made the most of it and looked forward to graduation. And then through a friend, I met my husband-to-be. He was over 20, and I never dated someone that old. I was 17. He took me to his church once or twice a month. He came from a Christian home where his parents went to church every Sunday, and they sang in the choir. He was a very nice boyfriend and asked me to get engaged after 2 months of dating. Well, what do you think I said? No. Gosh, 17?
You tried to say no.
But he did not give up. And in 1964, I graduated high school, turned 18, and got married all in the same week. And young girls, I do not recommend doing that. Then,
So we have to pause there. You can't just rush past that sentence. I'm sorry. We're going to park there for a minute, just real quick, thinking of, what was going through your heart, what was going through your mind, or maybe even your family, like any fears or any excitement. I mean, that is a lot. That is a week.
I know. And it's a very sad story on my case, which I don't really want to share the depth of it. It changed my life, Yeah.
Did it feel like God was involved in that for you?
No, it was the opposite.
Okay.
I thought, why me? Why this? Yeah.
But he didn't leave you there.
No, he didn't. So 3 weeks after getting married, my family moved back to Nevada. We didn't have phones, so just wrote letters. I was so lonely. And my husband became very possessive and would not allow me to have any friends. And I'm a very social, and with 6 girls, you can imagine how that was, having nobody. But I came from a family with very little boundaries, so I was used to doing what I wanted. I think God might have had a plan here. I felt trapped. But Christmas came, and 2 days after Christmas, we had our first son, Alan. This changed everything. The instant love you feel for your baby is magic. Now I had a purpose in my life. We went to church occasionally, for my husband went to please his parents. They were more about rules, what you can do and can't do. So in March 1967, I accepted Christ at a rally that worked with the Billy Graham Crusade.
Now, for anybody who doesn't know at all what that means, right? maybe they don't know who Billy Graham is, or maybe they don't know what the crusade is. I would love if there's anything you want to kind of tell about that story, how you went from, okay, just some seeds got planted and life's really taking you in a direction maybe you didn't see coming, maybe it was hard, maybe it was challenging, you're wondering, God, why me? But then you get to this point where you're fully trusting him.
Right.
So something happened.
Well, his parents, and even though we just went hit and miss, you do learn things. And I had the Spirit kind of pulling at me, but in those days, those altar calls, they would go on, and that I just couldn't do it. So we went to this crusade because his older brother and wife invited us to go, and nothing could stop me. I wanted to go. So I went forward, gave my life to Christ. And I was 20 years old. Yep.
With a baby.
Yes, a little boy. He was a year and a half. So I lost my place here or not?
I did that too. It's my fault. It's okay.
It's her fault.
You're going to move to Pennsylvania
Okay.
in one of your many moves.
One
Joan
of my
moves a lot, so we have to. I
yeah,
almost feel like
I
we should have
do.
made like a map and then made a timeline, or it could have been an activity sheet for everybody, like follow along and find where she's at now.
Okay, 3 days after I accepted Christ, we moved to Pennsylvania to stay with my husband's grandfather. His grandmother had passed 3 months before we got there. We all went to their church, Sunday school, Wednesday prayer time. I was learning, but had so much pressure put on me as a new Christian, I almost had a breakdown. We eventually moved back to California because my husband thought it was not the same as when he grew up there. We did not attend church. God was working in my life, I just didn't see it. Next year, 1968, we moved to Eugene, Oregon. And that's a story, it's a little too long, but which I loved the moment we arrived. We found a nice small church, but we're not regulars. I was also pregnant, but lost the baby a few months later. I was very sad and depressed and did not have closure until the butterfly service here at our church. Now, was that last year or 2 years ago?
You attended 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay. It was for any woman who lost a child or had a miscarriage. We talked about it and prayed. We were going to release butterflies, but the weather was a little too cool. So we wrote whatever we wanted on balloons and sent them all off together. Finally, there was closure.
And I just want to park here because this is one of those topics that you just don't gloss over. And I know just statistically how many of you in this room have experienced some kind of a pain or loss through a motherhood journey, whether that was never being able to get pregnant or having a miscarriage or multiple miscarriage or a stillbirth. And those are heavy, heavy topics. And even in today's culture, we don't do a good job of talking about that and walking through that kind of grief with each other. But this is however many years in the past where I feel like even more so, it was like you just don't talk about it, and maybe people say, well, it just happens, and
Right.
sort of say these things like you don't get that chance to grieve. And what was so interesting when we did this butterfly release for the first time a couple of years ago, this is something that's done through the Sarah's Laughter organization, which is nationwide, and it's a faith-based group for couples going through infertility, miscarriage, loss, adoption, and kind of all things related to that. And they do these butterfly releases, which really just give a ceremony, a memorial service for the babies that move to heaven before or at birth. And so we did our first one a few years ago, and what was so moving, I guess, about that is that almost every single person who attended that had a loss from like 40, 50, 60 years ago. I mean, these were long ago losses. These were not within the last year. And they all had a very similar experience where they had never been given the opportunity to grieve that.
Right.
And you shared just such a beautiful testimony at that point, and had this. And we wanted to stop and park on this topic for a moment. Some of you may have noticed there are some cards on your desk. We have another one coming up next month. So if you've experienced this, or maybe your friend has, or your daughter, or a neighbor, maybe it was decades ago, maybe it was within the last year, or maybe this just tugs on your heart and you want to be there to honor babies in general who have moved to heaven before or at birth, and we'll release live butterflies, and it's a really special time. So those cards are there, and Joan and I are available if you want to talk after on that topic at all. But before we kind of move on to the next chapter of your life, I just want to ask, at this point, you had a strong faith. Did that shake you?
It wasn't that strong at the time, because I'll get to that when I started to grow, but I was baby Christian. Yeah. I wasn't mad, but just really sad and depressed, Yeah.
But your motherhood journey does not end there.
No, and I think that's what got her to wanting me to do story night was kind of that story I told there. Yeah. But I don't want to cry, so I'm not telling that. So I got pregnant again right away, and in '69, our second son, Mark, was born, a healthy almost 9 pounds. I was 23, not a teenager like with the first one, so felt more comfortable with this baby. The next year, my husband got a transfer north to Albany, and we lived there for 4 years. We also attended church once in a while, but we had some very good Christian friends, and they still are today. I also got my citizenship there in Albany. In 1974, we bought 5 acres of land in Sweet Home, and we lived there for 30 years, but moved 4 times during that 30 years. At least our kids didn't have to change schools all the time like I did. But you know what they said? They wished we would have moved. So it doesn't matter, you can't win either way. In 1975, our daughter Brenda was born, and we were so happy to have a girl. Yeah, our family was complete. Our neighbors, a kindly older couple, invited us to their Baptist church. We attended regular and became members. I also got baptized 8 years after I accepted the Lord. This is where I really grew. I enjoyed this time of my life, watching the kids grow and having good friends that were like family. The next part is my life between 30 and 46 has many stories, and some of them are very painful, and I didn't feel to share those this evening. It was a growing time where I learned to pray, trust, and wait. 1982, our son Alan went to Japan for a year as a foreign exchange student. We also hosted a girl from Argentina. He came home in '83 to graduate with his class. He joined the Navy for 5 years, got married, and had a daughter. After the Navy, he went to the University of Oregon, got his bachelor's degree. His family moved to Taiwan for 6 years, where he taught English. Then they came home and he returned to school for a master's in education. He taught 7th and 8th grade and is now retired. In 1987, Mark graduated from high school and he went to work in a sawmill. He tried many jobs, even one in Alaska, but he found his career operating many different types of cranes. He got married, has 2 daughters, but sadly they divorced. He now operates tower cranes and is on the largest one in downtown Portland. In 1993, our daughter graduated with honors. She won a full scholarship to the Art Institute in Seattle to become an interior designer, which she does today.
Good job, Brenda.
Yes. Before leaving for college in the fall, she went to Taiwan to work for her brother. She has a son, Tristan, who is in the Army, and Ashlyn, who is here tonight, just graduated from George Fox and just started a new job. My daughter is my best friend and an inspiration to me.
And I think all of you saw that relationship when she introduced her, and what a beautiful, special thing. And especially when you think of some of the hardship you went through with your life and maybe taking some turns you didn't expect and even having some of this pain. But you got the picture up here of your 3 grown kids, and even with all those ups and downs, just to sort of see this relationship that you've got, it makes, I'm sure it makes a lot of the pain all worth it to see where you're at now. And we got to see the picture at the beginning of all your grandkids and great grandkids, and we know family is complicated, but what a gift to have all of those. And now, often what will happen when we do story nights is that, especially if I'm talking to somebody who does have children and grandchildren, many of their stories, they touch you also.
Yes.
What your kids go through, what your grandkids go through, or maybe your sisters or brothers, you take them on as your story also, because you're living it and you're walking through that pain with these people that you love. And we're going to kind of touch on a chapter here that's hard, and it's not fully just your own story.
No, it's not.
But it certainly affected you and how you maybe understood God in the middle of all of that as well. So this was a big turning point.
Well, Brenda touched on that. In 2003, she lost her husband in an auto accident. And now she was a young widow with 2 children, 4 and 20 months. It was such a shock to both sides of the family. We all wondered why God would allow this. He was such a loving father and wonderful husband. We still, to this day, don't have answers. My husband took it hard. He was a man who knew the role of a father to provide and take care of his family. In 2004, my husband Gary said, "We need to move closer to Brenda so as to be some support." Also at this time, he lost his job at 60, not because of his work, but they decided to sell all their log trucks. I went to a local realtor to list our house, and they said, "Nothing is selling in your area."
There's a story here, though.
I think I left that out. I just thought, I don't want you selling my house, even if you wanted to, if that's your attitude. So I prayed, God, if you want us to move up, you're going to have to help us sell this house. We put out a sign for sale by owner, and it sold in 3 weeks for full price. Now, does prayer work or not? After moving here, my husband got a better paying job. God's so good. We started attending Adventure Christian Church. My husband went and enjoyed the social part. A few years later, he was called to do a 3-week job in Redding, California. After a week that he was down there, he went to a Christian bookstore and bought a Bible. When he came home, he got up at 6 every morning and read his Bible. He now wanted to go to church and was a changed man.
I feel like we have to set the stage here just a little bit because, you know, you've heard the beginning of the story where you meet him and his family goes to church and you're going with them, but that was never a deep-rooted
No.
part of his life. But it became yours when you were a young mom. How did he
Yeah.
take that, watching you change?
He was really happy when he met me. He loved my parents because they were so warm. And he thought, oh, a girl that doesn't go to church, thank goodness. So he wasn't too happy when I turned. No, and it was sad. He just fought it his whole life. But he always let me go or went with me. Keep an eye on me was a lot of it when I was young. Like I'm going to run off
Who
with
would
somebody.
need to keep an eye on you, Joan?
I don't know.
We've been told you're stubborn.
Yeah, maybe a little.
So now he has suddenly kind of on his own.
Yeah, on
And
his
at this
own.
point, how old is he?
He was 65.
Okay. So you've been praying for him
65.
for a long time.
45 years.
Yeah. Don't give up,
45
ladies.
years. No. And I don't know what he experienced while he was there. And I didn't ask because I thought if he wanted me to know, he told me everything anyway. I was his best friend. He would have told me. It was enough for me that he was now a believer. So a year later, in 2010, he was having symptoms of a heart attack. I got him to Mac Hospital in 5 minutes. Do you know that some people said, why'd you take him there? Can you believe that? Let's see what our options are here. You know. And there happened to be a heart specialist there, so I thought that was good. And he ran a test on him and came in and told us there was no blocked arteries, but they thought about keeping him overnight and to do some more tests. The next morning, very early, he went into cardiac arrest. They called me and I got there right away. And it was sort of like in the movies to me. I was standing out of this intensive care room while they were going to life flight him to Portland, but they didn't have time. They had the gurney, the helicopter was there. And then he went into cardiac arrest, and there were 13 people in that little room. And they worked on him for 45 minutes. He'd flatline, and they'd bring him back, relax, flatline.
And you were watching this whole thing?
The whole thing outside by myself watching it, yeah. I was kind of in a fog, I think. They worked on him for a straight 45 minutes, but could not bring him back. The heart specialist came out and hugged me and said he was very sorry, but I said, you tried everything. I was never angry at God for taking him so soon after turning his life around. We were married 46 years. The one thing I have learned is trust. We have a God who knows why. I was 64 and alone for the first time. After a year, I did some traveling with grandkids, went to Fiji by myself for 5 weeks. As soon as I landed, I thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? That's another story, a long one.
We just needed a week straight of Joan stories.
Out of all the stories I could share, why this one?
Now we're about to pick up.
Yep. All my life, I had no say in where we were to live or what was said and done to me. God's story, the Bible, and my life story. How did they work together for His will to use me to help grow the kingdom.
Now, this is often maybe where, you'd think that the focus of the story might have been being so young and married, or losing a child, or losing a husband. And that wasn't where you felt called to sort of focus your story, but we wanted to sort of set the stage of just some of what you had been through and some of the sufferings you had experienced, because all of that forms together to sort of prepare you for what God has called you to do. And now at this stage in the story, this is where so many people who are maybe in a similar life stage sort of feel like, all right, we're on the tail end. Let's just coast into those sunset years. And maybe women who are widowed and in their 60s, 70s, 80s just sort of feel like the big chapters of their life are done. And it's calm and quiet now. And we hear that a lot even in ministry too, where it's like, well, there's nothing for me at this age, or there's what am I going to do? You did not sit back quietly though. And so now this is sort of like we started the movie where we see Joan as a widow, almost 70, about to go to India, and you don't know why or how she got there. And then then it says like 68 years earlier or something, and we've just done the fast forward version through almost 7 decades of her life. We're going to pick this back up at the airport.
Yeah.
But now how did you actually get to the airport? How did you end up going to India? Because this is not like one of those, I feel like going to India, let's book a ticket and go for fun.
That's why I call it saying no to missions. One Tuesday after senior Bible study, our pastor, Eric Nielsen, he asked me if I would be willing to go on a mission trip to India with him and 2 others ladies from our church. I just didn't feel, I said, no, I'm not equipped for mission work. So he said, well, there's going to be 24 other people from 5 different states. And he said, would you come to a meeting to learn what you'd have to do? And I thought, oh, yeah, I can do that.
The first baby, yes.
First, yes, but I still wasn't going. I just went to hear what they were going to do.
So still a hard no.
No,
You're just
hard
showing
no.
up
Okay, they'd be working with E3 Partners, which the home base is in Plano, Texas. Their mission is multiplying disciples and churches across the globe until every person and place has been reached for Christ. And we would need to raise our own money, which was $4,500, which was a lot.
Yeah, they had a whole list of things you had to do, right?
Yep.
So this was the first one. You had to raise
First
your own
one.
money.
Then we had to give a short testimony once we got there and were in the field. We would have to teach Genesis to Christ. Cram down. Wow. The first thing we had to tell them was it's the most high God, because in India they believe in thousands of gods, and they would have just added this to the rest of them. I'd have a translator and a lady in training. I had to get shots because it's third world country. And then also we would be doing some humanity work, teaching the importance of washing hands, AIDS, and giving out reading glasses. And that part I really enjoyed, because they make $1 or $2 a day. There's no way they can even afford reading glasses. So watching them, putting them on them and seeing them, they could read, it was really satisfying for me. We also had to bring our own lunch, because being out in the field, we didn't want to put any pressure on the people to feed us.
And how long were you going to be gone?
We were going to be gone 2 weeks.
Okay, so now you've gone to this meeting.
Yeah.
You've been given this whole list of all the things you have to do, even though you're going to say no, right? The answer's no. You're not going.
No, after this meeting, I felt even more apprehensive.
So the
about
no got
going.
even stronger. So
Yes,
first it was a no,
that's-
now it's an even
Now
more
it's a
serious no.
No. And the worst thing, I always kind of made my own way, so I do not like asking people for money. So they had a second meeting, and I thought, all right, I'll go. And I told him, I don't like asking for money. And there was a man there that goes on a lot of them, and he said, I never would. I paid my own way, but I realized that was wrong. And he told me, he says there's a lot of people who would like to go, but cannot because of their health issues, work, etc. They would be more than willing to help you raise the money. Okay. I'll go only if all the money comes in. That's the only way I know that God wants me to go.
Gave him the condition.
I
You do
had a
this and
condition,
Have
thinking,
you all done that before?
thinking, I've gotten out of this, It was another no, or was I just being stubborn? All my life, my family and friends said I was stubborn. And I never looked up what stubborn meant until I wrote this. And you know what Webster says? Stubborn means firm, willful, determined, persistent, not easily controlled. That's not so bad, is it?
What do you think, Brenda? Does that describe your mom?
So I sent out 30 letters and to ask for support. And I got letters and money and support from people I hadn't even seen in 20 years. So in 2 months, half of the amount was raised. I remember the Pastor Eric saying, well, are you going now, Joan? Nope, I'm not going. It's got to all come in.
Still at a no.
Still no. In another 3 months, all the money came in. In fact, $200 extra came in. Do you think God's trying to tell me something? I think he has a sense of humor. So I gave that extra $200 to the other two ladies that hadn't raised all theirs.
And at this point, did you say yes?
I guess I'll be going to India.
All right, and there are going to be some tests, and I'm sure some ladies will resonate with the fact that when you actually say yes to maybe doing something you think, God's calling you to do, there tends to be obstacles, right? Because
Yes.
things don't always just go super smooth, right?
Not with me, they don't.
Yep.
No.
All right, so we're going to go
Okay.
through some tests.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
This is the first test?
Yep.
All right, here we go.
Okay, when a group is going to do a great work for God, the enemy will put you through trials and try and stop it. The first one. 2 days before we were to leave, our trip was canceled. Our leaders who were getting things set up for our arrival in India were arrested, put in jail, and their passports taken because they found out our group was going to teach about Jesus. We all had to wait and see when or if the trip would be rescheduled. Now we needed to get a tourist visa to add to our passport. So the trip was booked 2 months later. Our pastor, Eric, could not get away at that time. That upset me a little because I felt more secure if he was going. Okay.
So now, who all is going at this point? There are a few of you from the same church?
Yeah, 2 other ladies from the church. Vicki Freeman, who just got back from India again. She loves it. That's her calling. And another lady, I can't remember her name. Joanna? No.
But a couple people you knew,
Yeah, I knew them.
and
Yeah.
that was like at the
and
little...
the pastor, and then one other person from Oregon who goes to a different church.
Yeah.
went.
So it's not like you're going with this group of, 50 people that you know
No,
really well. This
I
is a
didn't know
tiny
them,
little...
except for Vicki and our pastor, and then he didn't go. I didn't know anybody. No,
Yeah.
no.
Now you're finally
Okay.
getting to go. We're back at the airport now?
No,
Still not there.
Not just yet.
There's more tests. We'll get to the airport. We will get to India, I
We're
promise.
getting there. The day arrived for us to get our flight from Portland to New York, and we left at 6 a.m. In New York, we met up with the rest of the team, After a 3-hour wait, we took a flight to India, 14 hours. We arrived in Mumbai. It used to be called Bombay when the English but now they put it back to Mumbai. It's the most densely populated city on India's coast. It's the financial capital and India's Bollywood film industry. India is about 1/3 the size of the US, with a population of 1.420 billion. I never seen so many people. Compared to the US, 351 million. The next day, we had to fulfill our tourist visa. We went to a very overcrowded boat to a place called Elephant Island, and that was scary. I mean, I was sure it was going to sink. They had ancient cave temples dedicated to the Hindu god Shiva. We had to walk up long, steep steps to the caves, and there were hundreds of monkeys you had to keep an eye on, or they would steal anything you had. I don't like monkeys. There was a time when I was 11 years old, there was one in a cage. I think we were living in Henderson, Nevada, and it got a hold of my hair and wouldn't let go, and it hurt. I had to go get my dad to help me. I haven't liked him since, you know.
So now you're really facing your fears,
No,
right?
no.
You're in another country, there are monkeys, like all things are falling apart. And you're really wondering, I can't get out of this now.
No, can't get out of it.
Out of this now.
Oh,
my
after
goodness.
this, we all took a bus to our destination, northeast of Mumbai, a 7-hour drive. The next morning, we all met for more training and prayer, introduced to our interpreter and our little national lady in training. We then got in jeeps and drove out to the villages to begin our mission.
These are your teammates, right? We got some of the ladies
Yes,
up there.
those are the ladies. And
Yeah.
on the right is my second interpreter and the little lady.
Yep, so here we are,
Yeah.
the next little crew.
Okay. So my first interpreter, who was very young and proud, completely took over my job and would not let me speak. We visited 4 villages that day. When we returned, the leader asked me how the first day went. I was so tired from the trip. I just broke down crying and told him that I was not allowed to do what we were trained to do. The next morning, I had a new interpreter. And the rest of the week, we visited 4 to 6 villages a day.
So just to sort of paint this picture, especially for anybody who's never been to another country or never been on a mission trip, I mean, what does this look like? You wake up in the morning and you get in some kind of vehicle that takes you somewhere just with your interpreter, or?
We got up very early for breakfast. Then we went to a little, I think it was a little Catholic church. And they let us use that, and that's where we did some more studying and prayer and given our assignments for the day. And then we got in jeeps and went out bumpy roads, and it was dry. They'd had a 20-year drought, and 1,000 men that year had committed suicide because they'd gone into debt trying to dig wells, and they couldn't get any water, so that meant no crops. Sad. Yeah.
So you're driving through all of this with an interpreter, and everyone's kind of
Literally.
going
we
in
all
different
went.
spots.
The 26 of us, all had our own jeeps and interpreters.
Okay.
So we weren't together.
Yeah.
We just went out.
And then do these villages know you're coming, or do you just sort of show up and?
They call it a safe house. So they've usually prepared that, but most of the residents don't know. And we were kind of what you call the kind of a catch. Who is that woman? I've never seen her before, and she looks different. Why is she here? So that's what was a draw.
Kind of draw their interest, right?
Yeah,
So I always think about that, sometimes, I mean, gosh, if somebody, we've all experienced this, right? If somebody's coming to your door trying to sell you something or convert you to do something, some of us just never answer the door. We're like, all right, no.
Yeah.
So when you go to these villages, you wonder, are they all like, ugh, we don't want to hear from you, or there's this draw now to come in here. What are you talking
I had
about?
no idea what was going to happen until I
Yeah.
got there. And they were curious, so they came out.
To see.
And we stood around and they wanted to know, you know, and we usually said through my interpreter, would you like to hear a story? Of course,
Yeah.
people like that. And then
Would
I'd
y'all like
give
to hear a
them-
story? You're here for story night. We're here for here.
So I would give them a very short testimony, and then I would ask, the first thing I would ask them is, would you like to hear about the Most High God? And I never had anybody say no. They stayed. Yeah. So
Now you're about to have a third test.
yes, my
Okay.
third test. We were heading into our third village of the day. As I was about to speak, a lady came down the path and took me by the hand to follow her. In my mind, I went into panic. My interpreter, Dividus, said, just follow her. Had no idea where we were going. This is off script. We aren't supposed to do this kind of thing. So we came to a school with about 60 students from first grade to sixth grade, sort of like the little two-room schoolhouse I went to.
It's like God was preparing you or something.
The principal asked if I would speak to the students. I knew I couldn't say anything about Jesus because I would be arrested. So I asked my interpreter if it would be okay to talk about where I lived. I was really happy to have the laminate of Oregon with me. Now, this is just not prepared. You have to give a lesson to 60 students. How would you like to do that? What are you going to say? Oh, it was, I told them I was from Oregon, and they had no idea where that was at all. I tried to share how far it was. It was over 15,000 kilometers, or close to 9,500 miles. They still didn't know. So I said, well, if I was to walk here, it would take me 2 years.
That did it.
Yep, that did it. So I shared some things, crops mostly, things that they had, so we had something similar. They were fascinated by how large our berries were. We weren't supposed to eat anything from bushes, but if you don't tell, I did. Because I knew it would make them happy. They were little tiny small berries. So I was in the school, and then I gave them a little lesson, and then I kind of opened it up for questions. But they were so shy until finally one little boy started to ask questions. And then, let me see here. Okay, I think we were there about 20 minutes, and they gave me some flowers. I don't know where they got them. And they asked if I would sign and date a book that was hundreds of years old. And on the walk back to where I was supposed to give my talk, my interpreter told me I was the first person to ever speak at that school. Not anybody from India ever spoke there. So that was quite special.
What do you think of how maybe frightening or that would have been to just
It was.
be, okay, this person's leading me somewhere in this foreign country and you don't have anybody else
No.
with you but an interpreter, and look at what God did.
And I have a very active mind. It was just walking, following her. I thought, what in the world? Anyway, so my fourth test, the next day, and it was our second village in a very remote area, and there were only about 7 people present. And they were willing to hear our story, but seemed nervous rather than curious, like all the other villages. After story time, invitation, and prayers were finished, one of the men stepped forward and asked us if we could help his wife. And this is something, anything but this. I don't like this stuff. Why is God doing this? His wife had gotten into the occult world and was tormented by demons. Everything they tried did not work. I have never seen an exorcism done before. It was all done in Hindi, so could not understand what they were saying.
So just kind of pausing here for a minute again, probably some things that none of us have ever witnessed or experienced. Like, what was it that made it so obvious that she was possessed by a demon? I mean, how do you, what were the
They
symptoms?
said that she was just tormented constantly all night. She couldn't sleep, screaming at her and yelling, and she was scared and frightened. And
Now, the people who are, like the husband, right, who wants to help her,
husband and
is he asking for help through their religion or help from
he
you?
just wanted
Because
any help he
any
could
help
get.
at all at
Yeah,
this point, you're
he
just so
was-
desperate.
He was so desperate and afraid for her.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it upset the whole family.
And then you are going there and watching this.
I'm watching this.
Exorcism.
Yes.
But who is performing the exorcism?
My interpreter and the little lady in training.
So these are Christians that are
Yeah, that were with
Indian native
Yes,
from India that are doing this all in Hindi,
In fact,
and you're just
my
watching.
interpreter, he was a pharmacist, and they didn't talk to us at all to the very last day. But he told me that his wife was very upset with him when he became a Christian, very mad, because they get very shunned there, you know. And our main leader moved 52 times because his father put a hit out on him to be killed. But God protected him, you know. So I just began to pray that God's will be done in this situation. And then David put his hands on her head and began to pray. As he prayed, Suwani began with a loud voice to call them out. This demons. Yep. This went on for 45 minutes. Then she fell to the ground. I kind of thought she died. It scared me. She just was totally out. Her husband picked her up and stood her next to the wall of their house. And the leaders who prayed over told her to fast, and they would pray for her. We were late for our next village. Yep. Before we left, though, I went over to her and just held her for a while and prayed over her. 2 days later, we got a call to return to this home because she still had demons in her. So again, they prayed over her, and the rest came out. She accepted Christ and would be baptized and begin a Bible study. In fact, all the villages had follow-up Bible studies and much prayer. Most of the women would ask me a lot for prayer for their husbands, that their husbands would stop drinking. It's a big problem for them with, you know, the caste system 1 through 7, with 1 being like the people living, dying on the streets, and 7, the highest, are very wealthy. Mm-hmm. So they don't have much of a chance to get out of whatever you're born into.
Right.
Yeah.
Or did a lot of people witness this woman's exorcism?
Well, there was the 3 of us, and then 7 of them, and then 1 girl that was with 2 of their cows. She didn't want any part of it. She kept watching and looking at me, but she would never come close, you know. And you know they worship cows because they're everywhere. They walk in the stores.
They walk in the stores.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have free roam of everything. In fact, going out every day, it's like an amusement ride. I go, here we go again. Can you imagine? 6 lanes, elephants, goat herds, trucks, motorcycles by the millions, people, all going. And I thought, the only thing this could possibly work is they don't stop. It'd be chaos. They just go. That was every day till we got out into the country. Anyway.
So here you're in this third world country,
Yep.
and you just kind of touched on really how primitive sometimes things can be. It's a completely different world.
Yep.
It's complete culture shock. Besides the cows and the animals and everything going, were there any other parts that just shocked you the most, or that were the hardest to maybe deal with?
They don't have any trash. If it gets piled too high in the streets, they burn it. And they don't tell you things you're going to have to do, or maybe you wouldn't go. Like every day, we had to take our own toilet paper, and that's not so bad, but we had to bring it back and dispose of it back in town. And they just had a hole in the ground anyway, you know, which one of the villages is, that I was in, so remote, they didn't even have a hole in the ground. And of course, you're out in the field 10 hours a day, you know, I had to go. So they got a lady in the town, a little village, and she took me by the hand again and took me, and she says, out there. Now, it was a cornfield, which would have been okay if it was like ours, which are 8 to 10 feet tall. But these were 2 to 3 feet. And you know what they have in India? Cobras. So I had to go out there by myself. The only privacy I had was a long skirt. You know, I didn't like that.
The things that they didn't tell you in that meeting of like, oh yeah, you get to go to India.
People wouldn't go. But through the whole trip, for some reason, I had no fear, and I knew God would take care of us. Okay.
Now, I have to preface this.
Okay.
I feel like the ladies need to know something. Because we said Joan was stubborn, right? So she has not told me the end of tonight, of the story. I don't know what's coming. So we have an outline. Normally most speakers will write out their whole thing. We talk about it, and we trim it down, and we add things here, and we just go through details and so forth. And so when we were kind of doing this, like, all right, we've got this outline, but she's like, I'm not giving you the last page. So
I wanted her to be surprised.
there's
too,
a
for
fifth
change.
test coming. I don't know what's going.
I wanted to stress her a little. You know, these people that have it all in control.
She's like, you're not gonna. So there is this fifth test, and I have no idea. Here we go. We're gonna wrap this up, I think.
You may know this part. This is the fifth test, though,
Okay.
for me anyway. The day before we were to leave for home would be a day of freedom where we could spend time with our helpers, shop, and have a meal together. So at about 5:30 the next morning, I got out of bed, and my back went total out. Wow. My roommate had to help me get back in bed, and it took her a half an hour. After some pain meds, and of course couldn't go for the free day, I was able to get up around 11:30 and then went right back to bed. But around 4 that afternoon, I could walk some, and so I was able to go to our last meeting. We went over our last 2 weeks, and everyone shared healings. They witnessed baptisms, new churches formed. And some people, there was one man that was born deaf, and they prayed over him, and he got his hearing for the first time. Lots of miracles. If I did not go to India, God would still have accomplished his plan. But he wanted me to grow and see firsthand how he can use us if we are willing. And this is what I didn't tell her because I wanted her to know. And my whole life came up to this one moment. The greatest blessing for all 26 of us was seeing 839 people give their lives to Christ. That they had hope for the first time ever. And then I looked on an update for you from E3 Partners for India. They have 890,575 new believers trained, 762,271 baptisms, 89,764 new churches planted. In closing, I cannot go halfway around the world to bring people to Christ without asking. Is there anyone here tonight that has not accepted Christ? My hope is that you do. It will be the best decision of your life. Thank you.
Well, Joan, I want to thank you for taking time to do this. I know it's been a long time coming. And as you mentioned, when I first asked you, my brain was on a completely different story of her life, but she prayed about it, and like you said, took a year or so and said, nope, I want to share about India. And so we kind of did the prep work and got this going. And I wanted to ask you just two quick things before we have our closing song. The first question I wanted to ask you is, for anybody who might be in that similar life stage, maybe a widow or just maybe, kind of in that final, chapter of life, kind of in those sunset years, who might think, oh, I'm done, I'm kind of coasting. Do you have any words of encouragement to those ladies?
Okay, well, the first one,
Microphone.
if you're a Christian, you can't retire. That's a no-no. Oh, sorry.
These are important words. Come on.
Whoa. I don't know if you heard me or not, but I said.
Start over.
Start over. Okay. Number one, if you're a Christian, there's no retiring. Sorry. God's going to use you until you go home. And it doesn't have to be like going to India. It could be the simplest thing. Isn't that what Jesus taught us? Glass of water, being kind to somebody. There's a lot of lonely people out there today. Just because they belong to things, that doesn't mean they have friends or somebody that cares about them. So, yeah, up until I can. I don't know what adventure he has for me next. I don't try to think about it.
We might have to call you up here for a sequel story in 10 years. Well, I'm going to ask Abby to come up. And while she's coming up and getting ready, and maybe Abby just playing a few soft keys in the background as we close here, I wanted to, we always like to close with a prayer for the ladies here. And when we record these podcasts, I always ask our speaker if she'd be willing to, just pray for the ladies listening and whatever's going on in your life story, whether your story is completely different from Joan's or maybe more dramatic, less dramatic, anything like that. But would you mind just praying a little bit for everyone here and everyone listening?
Sure. Thank you, Lord, for each lady that came out tonight. It meant a lot to me. It made me feel warm, comfortable, took away stage fright. And I know each one of you has a special story in your life that can be used. If you don't want to come up here and speak, you can do it privately with Jessica. Somebody would love to hear it. And I just pray for each one of you that when you go home tonight, that there's something that has been encouraging that you can take with you. If you've met somebody new, we'd love to have you come back. So just thank you, Lord, and thank you for giving me the strength and courage to come up here tonight. Thank you, Please bless them. Take them
Amen. Thank you, Joan. I just sort of a closing thought here as we prepare for our closing song. I really want to encourage all of you ladies. The whole point of Story Night is to just get to know people more authentically. And there's probably women in your life that you don't know their stories. And maybe take an afternoon sometime and go to coffee and say, tell me your story. And I think we fall into this trap of thinking that a Story Night speaker or Story Night or people having a story, it has to be dramatic and it has to be this shocking story with cliffhangers and plot twists and all this intensity to it. And I hear that all the time. People say, well, I don't have a story. I don't have a story. I don't have a story like she has a story. And I just kind of want to erase that lie from everybody's mind. You all have a story, and all of your stories matter, no matter how dramatic or lighthearted they are. And somebody can be blessed by it. And with these closing words, this is a really sweet song that really, you had said this to me one time when we were talking in prep that God didn't actually need you to do any of this. Oh, she forgot. Hold on. This is how I was raised. I love it. God used you. As we were saying, you made that point that He did not need you to do this. Like, yeah, it was an honor that He used you in that. And those are some of the lyrics I hope you just take to heart from this final song that I was going to sing for us. you so much, Abby. Thank you, ladies, for coming here tonight. Like I said, if this is your first time, this was very different than how we usually do it. It was kind of fun. Thank you, Joan, for being a guinea pig up here and kind of doing a different format. Now, before you leave, I want to tell you that our next story night is coming up on October 10th, 10/10, easy to remember. And how many of you were here in March for Cindy's story? Okay, guess who's coming? Her daughter. So many of you remember at the end of Cindy's story, she kind of left a little cliffhanger there about her daughter's story. And so her daughter, Heather, is going to share her story on October 10th, probably in our traditional format. We'll see. But hopefully you want to sign up for that. You all have in your email the link to sign up for Heather's story. And I have a beautiful prize here for the First Lady who signs up. I also emailed you the link for the butterfly release if you or anyone you know would like to register for that as well. Thank you, ladies, so much for coming. Thank you all for bringing food and drinks. A huge shout out to our wonderful Dan in the back corner who makes everything happen. We can't do this without you. And ladies, you might not even know, but there's a security team that roams around every story night as well to keep us all safe. So thank you to them. We know some of you need to scoot on out. We love that you're here. Thank you for coming. Those of you who are able to stick around and help with chairs, that sounds great. And God bless each of you. Happy story night.